Yes.
Bogdanov, he did it.
He bought.
He went all in.
Dump it.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. Now, we have had a wild weekend leading into the week for Bitcoin. We had some mysterious, massive whale who apparently sold 24,000 Bitcoin worth over $2.7 billion, causing a $4,000+ crash. In fact, Bitcoin unable to get above the previous all-time high. It did, in fact, come down about 12%. Now, what is going on with this whale? Is this manipulation? Because to be completely honest with you, anyone who knows anything about how markets move would not have sold that on the open market unless they knew something or they were planning something. Is it possible that they were maybe putting in a potential short at the same time that they knew they would move the market so that they could make up the difference on the way down just to buy cheap? Who knows? You know, that could be a problem. There is still some of that manipulation potentially in the space, although I think it is getting less and less over time. But if we have a look at what we did, we called a perfect bounce to the resistance right here off of this $111,000 area. Again, if you were following the videos and you took this trade, it couldn't have been more easy. We did get rejected on the upward sloping trend at around $117,000, and now we find ourselves back down into this area. So if you simply had just played long, short, right? You would have had it. I mean, basically it was right there. That's what we called for. Nothing that we're seeing is out of the ordinary. However, we are pushing on the $109,000 area, which has a lot of people asking the question, once again, has the bull market come to an end? Is this it for Bitcoin? What would happen if Bitcoin did go below $100,000? Would that be it? Because we've been over 100,000 for about 4 months now. What happens if we lose those levels? Well, there are some things that show that we could possibly go below 100,000. Are we going to? Well, we'll have to see. If you want to stick around, we're going to get into all of that. But, you know, if we just come over here and have a look, there is something that could be potentially concerning. We've had this massive 6-year long trend line, which has always acted as resistance. Resistance here, resistance here. We come over, even when we had that first 107,000, resistance there. And then currently, we are sitting below it. Now, obviously, we have not closed out this weekly candle just yet. We do have until the end of the week, so could this just be one giant fake out? Are we just going to go to the upside? Or is Bitcoin actually due for a downside correction? And then, of course, the bigger question, is it over? Because there is still that 4-year cycle theory that if you do feed into that, then we should be actually approaching the end of the bull market, right? According to the 4-year cycle. Could it be that there are OGs that they have PTSD from these massive 80, 90% drawdowns, and they said, I've had enough. I've been holding crypto. I've been holding Bitcoin since 2013. I'm cashing out. I'm good. It's time to go buy my island villa and just, you know, relax the rest of my life. Could that be? Possibly. But the thing that a lot of people are still not comprehending right now, and it's difficult, especially if you've been in this space for a while, is with these newer, bigger players, this market is just not the same as it used to be. Could retail investors FOMO out, right? Sell out and then cause a bit of a slower correction? Because one thing that we also have going against us is the fact that, unfortunately, if you look at Bitcoin seasonality, September tends to be the worst performing month. And considering that some people are already unhappy with our August performance, how would that shakeout affect the average investors, especially if Bitcoin did dip below $100,000? Would you be prepared for that? Would it be the end, right? Big questions all around the area. I'm hoping that I can break this down to you a little bit more logically, and by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of exactly what's going on. Because if you do also feed into the 4-year cycle and you are selling now, then you know that that is the craziest part of the cycle where most of the gains are actually made, which means if you are selling or panicking at this moment, you are going to miss, according to history, the craziest blow-off moment of the cycle as is, right? So that's just something that we need to mention. The other thing that we need to talk about is there is a CME Futures Gap down here, and in order to close that gap, we'd have to come down to about $91,700-ish, maybe a little higher than that. And the one thing I wanted to point out is if we just come back here and we have a look, this has been a massive, massive bull trend, right? We pump up crazy, and then what do? We go sideways and down for months, and, you know, just going from top to bottom on this previous move, and keep in mind, this is in this cycle, that was a 30% plus move. Same thing here. This was a 30% plus move. And what did we do, right? After this consolidation, you know, it's going down, it's boring, it's the end, boom, we pop back up again. We go down again for a few months. What happens? Boom, we pop back up again. So if we were to do something like that again, come below 100, you'd have people screaming, the bull market's over, that's it, sell everything. We closed the CME Futures Gap, putting in just yet simply another downward sloping trend, or even just a bull flag for that matter, and then we rip higher to 150, 160, 200 plus thousand. Everybody misses the move. I'm just trying to sit here and be the voice of reason. If you are new to crypto, I can understand that this is a little scary. This is why they say, you know, volatility is Bitcoin's best friend, but it can also be its enemy, especially when you have these emotions in the market. So is this the top? Let's talk about it, guys. Well, over here on Cointelegraph, they had about 30 different of these possible top, indicators, and none of them are flashing tops. All of them are at most neutral. So they say recent losses could show new investors capitulating as seasoned holders are unfazed. If we come over here and have a look at the CBBI historical chart, now basically what this does, you see you can remove some of these, and you can see how the chart changes based on either adding or subtracting these sort of top indicators. You can see some of them are high. You have the 2-year average around 89, Puel 88. For the most part, though, as you can see, there's only about a 75% chance that we would be at the peak, right? So and if we come down here, you could see that generally speaking, these indicators, when bundled together, they form this sort of blue-gray line. We at some point break through the price action, and that's when we know that things are starting to get overheated. Well, if we zoom in right now, we've had 3 attempts and we've never broken above the actual price range itself. Every other time, you can see here, every other time we at some point break above this, and we come all the way up to around 99, 100. Back here, we had about a 97. Okay, what do we have right now? Again, around a 75. So again, if we're just simply looking at this, it goes to show you that it's probably not the case. Same thing with Ethereum. We were expecting a bit of a pullback, because what was happening was Ethereum was trying to break out against its Bitcoin ratio. It had been held down for how long, right? We dipped way below it, and obviously when you go to test a line like this for the first time, you're not going to expect an immediate breakthrough. This is just how these markets work, but it does not signal the end. But actually, speaking of a signal, something that did signal this Ethereum short, if you guys didn't get this over on the Discord, we did have an entry price at $4,725, and so far we have hit both our take profit targets number 1 and our take profit targets number 2. So of course, this is all just based on statistics, but if you guys do want to sign up or get over on MetaSignals, they have an NFT that gives you lifetime access. This is limited. They are going to end up burning all of these, and then it will basically just turn into a paid tier subscription. So if you want to get lifetime access to signals like this, check out the links below in the description. And if you want to trade, Themex has 10 more days. If you sign up, you get massive bonuses plus percentage back on your trading for VIP. So if you are trading, these are going to add up over time, and you're going to end up having these rewards deposited directly back into your account. Themex has been around for almost as long as I've been in crypto. They've stood the test of time. They're an amazing exchange. Check them out. We do have links below. $6,000 in bonuses over there as well. But again, there's not enough good news that can come out. Publicly traded ETHZilla to raise up to 10, is that 10 billion with a B? Dollars to buy more Ethereum. We also have President Trump's media company now owning the 8th largest Bitcoin treasury worth billions. But yet people are bearish right now. We also, oddly enough, have the IRS crypto chief Trish Turner resigning after 3 months to join Crypto Tax Girl. That's something I don't think anybody had on their bingo card, really, to be honest. But you got to ask yourself a question before we get into the charts, before we talk about the possible tops, which, by the way, there is also another indicator that we don't speak about very often on this channel, which could also hint as to when Bitcoin is getting overheated. But I want you to think about what's been happening recently, especially in the US. Why do you think they were pushing so hard on this Genius Act? Why do you think they wanted to get that legitimacy around stablecoins in the United States? There might be something bigger at play here, and it actually might be more bullish for things like Bitcoin and Ethereum than even just for the stable coins themselves. Preston Pish was actually speaking about this, and I want to play this clip. Start thinking about it. You got to change your mindset and think about what really might be happening here in the background.
They were tripping over themselves to pass the Genius Act. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why were these politicians tripping over themselves to get this thing passed? And the answer is really simple. They needed a buyer for all their debt. And the buyer is the stablecoin issuers. And it's really kind of interesting to see how that all really transpired and really kind of came to a head is, the government had to start issuing shorter and shorter duration paper because there was no buyers for anything that was long duration because there was so much inflation risk. So they're down there like issuing like 1 month money. And it's like, well, who's going to buy all this 1 month money? Well, you know what? The stablecoin issuers literally, like, they love that because they can back everything. They can gobble up all this new issuance. They don't have the inflation risk that if they were buying 30-year paper, they don't want that inflation risk because they don't know if it's going to be fully backed, right? Or they'd have to keep rolling it to try to, like, manage that. But if it's really short duration, it's actually perfect for them. And then the really smart ones, what are they going to do with all the coupons that they're receiving? They're just going to sweep it into Bitcoin. And then it's really backed because that thing's going up at 40 to 50% annualized. It's like extra over collateralized. What I find so interesting with all of this is you literally have BlackRock and all these other banks that are playing a fractional reserve game. They don't even have what they're issuing in the vault. But yet you have a company that's fully collateralized with extra Bitcoin in the vault. And they're making more profit than the ones that are playing the Ponzi game. And they're getting the issue like literally from thin air. And they're making more money than them. If that doesn't show you like the natural market forces that nature is trying to heal itself, I don't know what does. Because it's miraculous to me that you can have something that's over collateralized just whipping the pants off of the ones that are literally cheating as if it's a total Ponzi scheme.
They need easy access. They need liquidity. We know they're just going to print the dollar into oblivion. If these stablecoin issuers are willing to buy these short-term options, right, and they are able to then get that liquidity into the system, what do you think they're probably going to end up doing with those stablecoins? They're probably going to end up converting them to things like Bitcoin. Okay, let's just be honest here. Bitcoin, Ethereum, possibly Solana, right? Who knows? But at this point, we know that the main focus has been Bitcoin. We're seeing a lot more focus into Ethereum. And speaking about Bitcoin's longevity, Bitcoin has reached 2% of all global money. This is not a passing fad, my friends. You do not reach 1/10 the price of gold if you are a passing fad, which, by the way, if we were to reach the market cap of gold today in the price of Bitcoin, that would right there get you our $1 million Bitcoin, which we've been speaking about on this channel. And I don't need to keep pulling up charts like this, but guys, purchasing power of $100, I'm sorry, $100. If you had $100 in January 1st of 2000, today your purchasing power is about $58.80. Do you want me to flip that into the Bitcoin math? Let's look at the Bitcoin price in 2000 versus the Bitcoin price today. I think you know where I'm going. I don't even have to pull up a chart for this one. Not to mention the fact that we do have an 86.3% chance for the Fed cutting rates. And by the way, I know a lot of people think that this is massively bullish. It is, but short term, historically, when we do have rate cuts, we've actually seen declines in the stock market historically. So just kind of take that as you will, but I don't think it's going to deter from the overall trend of Bitcoin. So let's hop in and let's have a look. Let's see how bad this Bitcoin price chart really is. So you can see right here on the weekly, if we switch over to the daily, yes, we can see there is potential turmoil. We are, again, interacting with the 89, okay? But zooming out on the larger picture, we're only just at the top of this EMA area, which is sort of, if you take the top, it's around 108, with the low area around 82. Now, I'm not saying we're going to go to 82,000 because don't forget, Bitcoin doesn't just drop down in a straight line. It's going to slowly, creep up over time. So who knows, by the time we hit that, by the time we go down to that, maybe we're down at the lower end, 93, 91. We close that CME Futures Gap, right? But if you're zooming out here and you're trying to figure out where we are based on our interactions, you could almost argue that we're doing something more similar to what we were doing back here in mid-2020 as to what we're doing here. Just sort of dancing and interacting with the line. Or maybe you think it's something like this. It's possible, right? But until we fall down and start having this act as resistance, have something turn over, there isn't anything that's suggesting that we're looking to go into a bear market. I mean, the money flow is staying completely in green. Yes, we do have a little bit curvature to the downside, but really all that's going to end up doing is setting you up for a massive anchor wave, probably most likely followed by a trigger wave, which would send us much higher, right? When we go into these bull market setups, you can look at the bands. This is 200, 150, 21. What do you end up finding? You find that when we are in this perfect setup from the lowest to the highest, or depending on how you're looking at it, the highest to the lowest, right? We find that we stay above this for quite a long time. We do end up having these potential interactions with the yellow line, which is the 50, right? Well, if we come over here, what are we doing? We are moving higher, and we are having interactions with the 50, and you could see right here, guys, when we had this golden cross, this was telling us that we are setting up for a run. So a lot of these people that are saying that we're looking to go into some kind of massive bear market, I would disagree, because right here, this is suggesting that we're setting up for something much, much longer. And really, if you want to look at the boring trend, we're just bouncing between this very, very boring, upwards grinding, institutional style parallel channel. Okay, and right now we're in the middle. So a little bit below the middle, right? So there's no reason to be incredibly bearish. We're not at the bottom. There's no reason to be incredibly bullish. We're not at the top. In fact, we're pretty damn neutral. So this is telling me if we were to go any lower, if we did come down to the bottom of this area, which by the way, if we were to dump straight down, that would be 83,000, which that is most likely not how Bitcoin's price action is going to move. That to me would signal massive buying opportunity, right? We had this blue zone area right here. And what tends to happen when you break these psychological levels, you break 100K, what happens? You want to have the retest, right? So if we were to fall below 100,000, I can imagine everyone in their mom would be screaming, it's over, that's it. But it's just a psychological level. It's just a number. It doesn't actually mean anything meaningful outside of the fact that psychologically it's a nice round number. So if you were to come down, right? I mean, just take this for example. Look at exactly where this blue zone is sitting, right? And I'm not saying we're going to go this low. I'm not saying that. In fact, we could have another bounce. I think we could have a bounce back up to 112,000. Why not? 113,000. Come down here, and if you were to lose this area, you would still have a constructive uptrend, right? Actually, let me even just make it even cleaner for you. A constructive uptrend. There you go, right there. We come down to the 91. Everyone's freaking out. Massive buying opportunity. Retail is selling. Institutions are buying up all the crypto while everyone else is panicking. And then what do? Well, we continue back off to the races and we're gone, right? And that to me is more of the likely outcome. Now, if you do want to talk about potential tops for Bitcoin, these are sort of the 4-year cycles. And one thing to pay attention to is this 200 weekly moving average. So when this 200 weekly moving average becomes the same price as the previous all-time high, well, right here in 2017, that marked the top with about a 5 or 6 month lag here once we got back to this high, right? Did I do that? Yes, back here, connect that. That sort of, now you would have been a little bit late. I'm not going to lie. You would have, if you did take this, you would have been down roughly, actually about 30%. So it could have been one of those fake out dips that you thought was going to go back up. But as you could see, this was sort of the last release rally. Well, if we just extrapolate the data and assume that, well, we don't have to assume, we can clearly see this is an uptrend, so no assumption necessary, that this is continuing to move. Maybe we come up here. That possibly puts us as topping out maybe somewhere in April, May, June of 2026. Now, that would be going against the 4-year cycle narrative, right? But again, these institutions have changed the game. Getting back to Ethereum, I do want to actually mention that Ethereum is actually holding up a lot better in comparison. It's actually still staying up here. And if we zoom in, go back to the daily, we do have some areas that we're looking to. So yeah, for Ethereum, obviously you're looking for a potential retrace down to about 4,100, which also would coincide with the meta signals as well. But ultimately what I'm trying to say is I don't want to drag this video on for too long. These are just normal cyclical things that happen in markets. September, arguably not a great month. You have the 4-year cycle. People are thinking this could be the time to take profits. And maybe that does provide some sell pressure. But what I'm seeing is we're not seeing any of the top indicators. And if you do have massive retail sell-offs, retail is really not going to be that much of a, compared to the institutions. They have the liquidity, they have the capital to absorb that. And I believe that that's what they will be doing. They will be buying these dips and we will continue to grind higher and to the right. And that's pretty much where I think we're at right now. So that's where I'm going to end this video. So that's how I feel about everything that's going on based on what I'm seeing. This is not my emotion. This is what I'm seeing in the charts. And yeah, basically that's it. So if we were to dip below 100K, which is possible, we would basically just be filling a CME Futures Gap, creating a lot of retail panic, and you would just be giving the institutions more cheap coins to buy at the end of the day. Got to start thinking like these guys if you do want to stack, if you do want to hold, if you want to trade. Obviously, we've had massively good trade setups, whether you've been watching my channel, okay, just watching my simple TA. I've been giving you guys the trade setups. MetaSignals has basically nailed the Bitcoin move, the Ethereum move up, and the recent Ethereum pullback. So I'm not saying to just blindly take these signals, but they're there if you want them, guys. If you do want to trade, you can check out those links below. You can also check out these tutorials popping up right here, right now. And of course, don't forget, there are 10 days left if you guys want to unlock the VIP trial. They also do have a trading competition, which is ending in 4 days. I highly recommend checking that out, guys. But until next time, stay crypto. And of course, peace out.